look for the deep waters when it gets this hot out. You don't necessarily have to go out front. Eventually into August. August is when they start running out to those offshore pieces.
Hello and welcome back to the Fat Dad Fishing Show. I'm your host, Rich Natoli, back again this week, and we've got to go back to Fluke. We have to talk about Fluke. That's what we're going to do. We have the lovely Bayside Dave coming on, and we're going to talk about a topic that is just blowing up on social media all over the place, and it's basically what the heck is wrong with flounder season this year in certain areas. Some people are having great years, some people aren't. And we're seeing, I was talking with Dave, and we're seeing a lot of opinions, a lot of blame to go around for what's going on with Fluke this season. And we're just going to talk through it. And I think we both have our own opinions as to what's going on with Fluke season. And we're going to talk about that. Before we roll into that, going to hit the sponsors real quick. Great Bay Outfitters on Radio Road in Tuckerton, New Jersey. Anything kayak fishing related. They're back from ICAST. Got that new, what is it, the Mossa? He's got the new kayaks. He's got everything. Look, if you're looking for a kayak, go down there, call Paul, test drive the kayaks right out in the lagoon. You're going to drop thousands of dollars on a ride. You may as well make sure it works well for you and it fits what you're looking to do. Paul's the guy for that. He's also the guy to outfit and fit out the kayak. If there's any modification that you need, he can do it. He does it, and he does it professionally, cleanly, the right way. So Great Bay Outfitters, Radio Road in Tuckerton, New Jersey. Quad Stay tuned if you have a Toyota Tacoma, Tundra, 4Runner, Lexus 460 or 470. These are the engine tunes that are going to get you better performance out of those engines. They're great engines, but they can be better, and it's not very expensive. Just a few $100s. You can tune those engines. You get better throttle response, torque, more horsepower, smoother shifting. If you're towing a boat, this is definitely something you should look into. You're just gonna get that much better performance out of it. And then the last one is me, Rich Natoli, real estate agent, Southeastern Pennsylvania. I'm with Weichert Realtors Cornerstone. I work primarily out of the Bluebell office, but I cover all over Southeastern Pennsylvania. I was out in Bucks County today, also Montgomery County, Chester County the other day, down to Philadelphia County. I'm all over. Look, if you need anything for real estate, please give me a call, email, or text natolirealestate@gmail.com or 267-270-1145. And we're not gonna delay at all. So let me bring on Dave. Dave, good to see you. Welcome back.
Yeah, hey everyone.
It's good to see you. I was just in the opener saying we were having a conversation on the phone, and man, there are a lot of people saying that Fluke season is terrible and there's stuff going on, and people are slinging blame on social media.
Yeah.
And you and I have our own opinions, research-driven opinions. And look, we just figured this is a good time. Instead of going into all the how-to tactics and all that stuff, why don't we just have a conversation about Fluke season and what's going on? And I want to set this up the right way. There are places where people saying banner year, they're pulling in double digits. New York, I'm seeing a lot of really good stuff. I'm seeing some good stuff in Maryland. There is this apparent social media dead zone between just north of LBI all the way down to Cape May in New Jersey, which a lot of people, not all, but a lot of people are saying it's pretty well dead and it's a terrible season. Then every once in a while, somebody says, no, it's not. Look at this. And they send a cool picture of some nice fish. But let's start off. What's one of the opinions that you keep seeing when you're on social media or when you're talking to the hordes of people that follow you in LBI?
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think it was just a really slow start this year. And when, we all know that we had some really, really cold weather this winter, and it really chilled the temperature of the ocean waters. Had a lot of south winds coming up in the spring that really didn't warm up the water that great because of all the upwelling. Striper season started out a little slow, but then it went off the charts, off the surf. And we could talk more about that on another show. But yeah, I think the season just really started out really slow.
Yeah.
we're always talking about blaming the cold water and all that stuff and the different wind and everything. But I've seen now that the last couple of weeks we're seeing better reports. But the reports that I've been getting and that we've been seeing is tons of shorts, tons of shorts. It's not that it's dead and there's no fish out there. There's just a lot of short fish being caught, and the ratio of shorts to keepers, is very low. I was out with a few guys last Saturday out front on our way to the Garden State South, and we actually didn't fish that actual spot, but we hit a couple spots on the way, some good producing spots that my buddy knows very well, and we had over 50 fish and one keeper.
Yeah.
And that's what I keep hearing.
Not a great ratio.
So many shorts, and just a couple keepers here and there. And then there's guys who, kind of move around and pick at it and get a few big ones and figure they had a good day, which I agree. You're picking up fish, you're having action. You picked up, what did they say? That there was 4 guys, 80 fish that day, and they had 6 keepers. You don't need 80 keepers.
Right.
Everybody loves to have action. Everybody loves catching fish. It just sucks when you're just not catching.
Yeah.
That's out front. The bays are hit or miss. It all depends on the area. I think I've had guys that have been fishing the bay since the beginning of the season, and they are not having much luck at all. And then I have other guys that are just slamming it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the different people with different tactics or the different areas. I'm not out every day. I'm not fishing every area, so I personally can't say if there's a problem. I really don't think there is a problem, but you always get the people, and I think there's good seasons and there's bad seasons.
Yeah.
I was talking with Greg Kudnick from Fisherman's Headquarters this afternoon about the subject, and he was saying how last fall, like September, when the season was still open, he said they were just killing it, slamming it with nice sized fish. And then he had friends of his who run commercial draggers, the net draggers that you call them, out of Barnegat Light, called them up. They're like, Greg, get out here. This is in December, and you're allowed to target fluke.
Sure.
It's not illegal to target fluke all year round. You're just not allowed to keep them off season. And they were out dragging. He says, get out here and have fun catching 10-pounders because they're out here. It's insane. So it's not like there aren't any fish out there. I think the problem is, like I said, it's the shorts to keeper ratio that are driving people crazy.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely some reasons. I think there are some scientific reasons behind there. Before we jump into that, let's talk about one of the popular things that I've been seeing, and I know that you've been seeing and hearing. There's a lot of the traditional blame. It's all about the commercial guys. The commercial guys have ruined us this year. And I know you have some information on that. Let's talk about the data behind it. And then, we can each give our opinion. Is it a fact or is it a myth for this year specifically? But listen, let me frame this whole thing out. 2024 was a pretty tough year, right?
Yeah.
And there are some reasons for that. 2025 was a very good year for most people. It was a very good year. And then this year is kind of in between the two. And, and the one thing that I am seeing is people saying it's commercial. It's this non-ending, forever, infinite holy war between rec and commercial. So let's talk about that. What kind of information do you have on that?
Yeah, I mean, my buddy John Stubing, who's the vice president of the club that I'm in, Village Harbor Fishing Club, he knows a few guys who are commercial fishermen, and they drag nets for fluke. These guys all have quotas. They have to have a permit, and they have daily quotas. They have monthly quotas that they're not allowed to go over. But what they do is they have to pick the day and then how much they will take on that trip without going over their quota. And if they do go over the quota, say they're allowed 3,000 pounds that day and they pull into the dock with 4,000 pounds, they get a big fine for that. If they're only allowed to take 3,000 pounds that day and they come in with 3,200, they might not get a fine for that, but they're going to throw 200 on the next trip. They're going to say, all right, you can't get 3,000 next trip. You can only get, 2,800. So it's very carefully and very strictly regulated with these guys. And here we go, as of now in 2026, the summer flounder fishery has not been overfished by the commercial guys.
Okay.
It's almost impossible for these guys to overfish the quotas. There are other boats that do come up from, say, Virginia and stuff, and they'll come in and they'll drag and get some of their quota and come back down. But a lot of these guys, they're actually buying permits that are available in order to do that. So they're still being regulated by the quotas. There's only a certain amount of permits that are out there. It's not just however many people want to buy permits. Here they all are.
Right.
There is a regulation on the amount of people who are allowed to fish commercially. Now, I'm not here sticking up for the commercial guys. I'm just stating facts from research. There's also research that is out there. Here's a chart that I kind of printed out, and it shows the catch. It shows the recreational landings and discards, and it shows the commercial landings and discards. Now, the commercial landings and discards are the dark color, and the recreational is the light color. So you can see that recreational is pulling in twice as many fish as commercial guys are.
Right.
But again, I'm not saying there's a problem, because of all the people that I've been talking to and all the reports that I've been getting, there's not a shortage of fluke. Like you said, it was bad in 2024. It was good in 2025. We have weather conditions. We have all kinds of stuff that goes on with the environment, with the ocean. You can't predict anything as far as what kind of action we're going to get when we go out fishing for fluke, or any other species for that matter. So, yeah, I mean, that's about all I have to say about the commercial.
Yeah.
They're regulated, and they're not, it's not a free for all out there for these guys. They have their quotas, and they have their, they get fined if they drag in too many,
Yeah. It's not like Omega.
No,
it's a different, it's a different commercial thing. And I don't care if Omega hears. Omega sucks. Omega is destroying everything.
Yeah.
These are different. This is a different thing.
Yeah, and it's not like me and you can go in on go. Let's go buy a big commercial boat with nets on it and go drag up fluke and sell it to the market. We can't do that. We need permits to do that.
Yeah.
We get in a lot of trouble if we go out there with a boat without permits.
Yeah.
So it's very highly regulated.
Yeah. Do you have any idea? You may not, what the fines are for
no, I don't. I never got a chance to ask what they are, but I could imagine that they don't want to get fines, whatever they are.
Yeah, I'm here's my thing. So I didn't do as much research into. I tend to think the entire, generally speaking, the recreational versus commercial is just an easy way to sling shots at each other.
Yeah, push the blame on something,
Yeah, and I don't know that that's necessarily the case for fluke. I see 1,000 other reasons for why people are having difficulty this year and why some people are having success. I can see why it's happening, and I'm going to make a lot of assumptions, but I'm going to back it up with a little bit of science too. So I'm going to say, let's just declare it. I believe you agree. It's a myth that it's the commercial guys destroying fluke fishing this year.
Yeah.
And I want to dive into, and you had mentioned it a couple of times, the water temperatures have it's all about water temperatures. And let's go back to 2024. And look, this is going to be different for different areas in the mid-Atlantic, right? So let's talk water temperatures in 2024. I specifically, because I saw most of the complaints and the concerns coming in just north of LBI down through Cape May, New Jersey. I saw some spotty things up in New York. And actually, I didn't really see much complaining or negative feedback about the fishing in Maryland or Delaware. So it was really that section of New Jersey. So most of New Jersey, but not the whole thing. And I looked at that and I got some data. So let's talk 2024, where I think, I didn't fish that year. I was sick, but everybody said, if you're going to get cancer, this was the year to do it because Fluke sucks. And I was like, well, there you go. There's a little positive for me. I didn't miss anything in 2024. So let's call that the deep freeze, right?
Yeah.
And that was, let's take it through the season. So late May, in that area I talked about, LBI essentially down to Cape May, the average water temperature was between 56 and 58 degrees. So that is definitely within the Fluke's tolerance level, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get into June and it just stayed in the low 60s. So it was around 62 degrees in that time frame. It bounced up to 64 a couple days, but generally speaking, it was between 60 and 62 degrees.
Yeah, we had a lot of south winds that year.
Yeah, and this is where it really hits. So early July, it crashed. And that's where you got severe upwelling. You got those south winds, severe upwelling, and the average temperature dropped into the mid 50s. Now you're getting a little bit below the ideal zone for these Fluke, like significantly below. So that's what happened. And the problem is it stayed in the 50s and low 60s all the way through July, almost up until the end of July. And then after that, I didn't look after that because we're not there this year, so I can't compare anything.
Yeah.
But it stayed pretty cold. Now, ideally, those temperatures are going to be in the low 70s at this time of year. So let's go and take a look at last year. So 2025, 59 degrees in late May, so very similar to the previous year. But then what happened is it goes up to 66, 67 degrees, and it started rising consistently. So as you get through June to the end of June, it's up in the mid to upper 60s. This is normal. This is normal patterns so far, temperature-wise, for summer flounder. Then we get to July. Now, again, 2024, that's when the temperature crashed to the mid 50s. It warmed, and it warmed quick. So you went up around 6 degrees in the second half of July, on average, last year in that zone between LBI and Cape May. That is normal. So what happens? They head out the inlets, they go out to the deeper wrecks, and that's where you get the offshore bite is really picking up. And it pretty much just stabilized around 73 to 74 degrees.
And you're talking ocean temps.
Yeah, these are random temperatures throughout.
Yeah, the bays are always a lot warmer because of how shallow they are.
Yeah, so these are the it's going to be a lot of offshore stuff there too.
Yeah.
Now obviously, look, keep in mind it's different temperature down at the bottom than it is up top, but those were the surface water temperatures. Look at this year; it's same start in May. We get into June, and this is where I think people are getting hung up. The temperature has been anywhere between 60 degrees and 70 degrees in June, 69 degrees throughout the month. So it would be up to 69. 2 days later, it's down to 63. Then we go up to 67. Then it would go down to 60. So it was bouncing in between that area. Now, what happens in the biology of the fish when that happens? It's not kicking off its normal migration patterns. So as they start to leave the backwaters, they don't turn around and go back if they hit cold water. They stop and they stall where they are, and they find structure and they hide behind structure. You get into early July, the water temperatures that were, inching up into 69, they now drop down to 63 as we get some more upwelling. Nothing like 2024, but there's upwelling. So now you have the low 60s as the water temperatures. And at this point, it's now stabilizing between 72 and 77. That's a big range. So it's still a lot of variability. So to me, what that's screaming is you need to be adjusting your approach and not assuming that, the average person that doesn't follow, they just want to go out and wet a line and they just want to catch fluke. They don't do any research, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're not watching podcasts. They're not reading articles. They just go down to the shore. They're like, hey, I got the morning. I'm jumping on the boat and going fishing.
Yeah.
They're going where they went last year. And where they went last year is not where they should be going this year. Right. The fluke are going to be behaving differently. They're going to be stacked up tighter on structure, very tight. When the water gets colder, they get more sluggish, which means stop the Skinner jigging and slow it down because they're not going to be as aggressive. Go with the slower jig, dead stick the thing, use some natural baits, get some more scent in the water. And those are just some of the things.
I was just thinking that because, with the colder water, they're like, well, where do the fish go? It's not that they go anywhere. They get lethargic. They're not as aggressive with their feeding.
Yep.
And you'll see that when you're catching fish. Last year, when it was really warm out, I was catching 14, 15-inch fluke that were like this because they were feeding like crazy.
Yep.
And they were very healthy. And this was even earlier in the season, real fat fish. When it gets colder out, and like the fish I've been catching this year, they're not as heavy. They're not feeding as much. They're there. They're just not feeding as much.
Yeah.
So that's where you have to you change your approach. Like you said, slow it down. What we do, I mean, always, I'm a surf fisherman mostly.
Yeah.
And I always say the slower the better. And sometimes you just pause, you retrieve, and just keep it tight and just kind of move it. And if you feel a bite, just stop and just keep it in their face. Because if you keep going, they might not have the energy or the want to keep moving and to be aggressive because it's colder. So they're conserving their energy. Just give it to them, put it in their face. When we go out front and we're at wrecks or reefs or whatever, we'll spot lock and just drop down and just kind of jig it around, and then you work a spot for a little while, and then move it around and stop and work a spot for a little while. And when you're drifting, you're basically you're a slave of the wind and the currents. Anything above a knot and a half, you're drifting too fast.
Yeah.
If you could get a 0.7, 0.8 knot drift, that's the max that I feel you're looking for. Anything over a knot and a half up to 2 knots, you're starting to move, and the fish don't have it in them to just be as aggressive and follow and strike that you see in those videos where they're just following and striking and all that stuff. Right. I think that just happens in the warmer water, and that's where we have to change our tactics. And like you said, maybe something with more scent, maybe more natural baits. Maybe get the minnows down there more. I've been using whole squid. Those blue boxes of frozen squid that you get, and those things are getting slammed, man. The squid, 4, 5, 6 inches long. I'll use a 6.0 octopus hook on the top, and then I'll take a stinger and a 4.0 and just pop it in the head, and of course leave that stinger line loose so it doesn't bind up so it looks more natural. And just drop it down and just kind of either jig it around or slowly up and down and just kind of give it like a swim look to it. If you are drifting, just kind of, I don't believe in the quick jerk, little jerks. I like just giving it let it swim. I don't know. That's just me. I'm not saying don't do it the quick jerky way because that probably works too. But I just like a larger bait. I feel it just looks more natural when it's like swimming and stuff. At a slower jig, and they've been slamming those things, and I really love them. So yeah, that's and you like you said, the spot, maybe strip baits. Strip baits are fantastic. When they're slower, they need something more than something visual to attract them, and they are attracted by scent and of course visual. But you got to change it up a little bit, slow down, and give them some stinky.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about it again. I like to look at a little bit of the biology behind everything, whether, not just the fish itself, but also the baits. I'm not going to talk much about the baits right now, but they're going to behave differently in different temperatures. But let's talk about what you're going to do. Let's say you have one of those drops. I mean, we're just all over the place with water temperatures, up and down, up and down. You're going to see, let's say you see a cold temperature start coming in and you are fishing out front. So you're out of the inlet, you're off somewhere looking for wrecks. Oftentimes, fluke fishermen take the approach of, close enough, right? It's close enough. Well, think of what the fluke is doing in the cold water. So let's say you have upwelling, you have a southern current, it's cold water coming up in the 50s. It's going to drop the entire water column down in temperature. The fluke are going to be on the bottom because that's where they live. So where are they going to go? They're going to go tight to structure, very tight. And they're going to tuck in behind it so that they don't have a continuous stream of 50-degree water coming over top of them.
Yeah, go down current. Yeah.
So go to the opposites, go to the north side of the structure and get in tight. Spot lock that oh, I almost said a bad word. Spot lock that thing right over top and hit that structure and just be ready to lose rigs, because that's where the fluke are. They're not gone. But you drifting on a reef ball within 10 yards isn't going to work today.
No.
But it
No,
will
you're right.
work.
They do, protect themselves from that stream of water and get behind a structure like that. And that's a really great thing to tell people to do.
Well, yeah. And think
That's really
about
good
also
advice.
when you're over sandy bottoms, what are they going to do when the 50-degree water's coming through? They're going to
Yeah.
get under the sand, which
Yeah.
means they're not chasing. Slow. It goes back to slow it down, get scent in the water. They're still going to see it.
Yeah.
But they need to see something enticing enough that they're going to raise out of that sand, and they're going to turn into the cold water, and they're going to follow and take it. Right. So they're going to be facing into the water, under the sand, and they're going to have to come up. So behind structure, under sand now. That's not necessarily how it is when it's 80-degree temperatures and they're just cruising in, like, the cold water coming through 70. They're like, cool, love it. I'm just going to hang out. I'm more
spikes them up a little bit, gets them going. Yeah.
It does. So to me, I think what's actually happening is people are treating it like July of last year. It's not like, stop fishing the calendar. It's not the calendar. It's the conditions. Yes, tides factor into it, tide cycles and so on and so forth. You will often see in this kind of yo-yo environment of temperatures that we have that they compress their feeding times. They're not as comfortable in that cold water. They're not as aggressive. So they will feed in fits and starts, typically around a tide change, right? Think about it. The water slows down. The baits slow down. Everything that they're looking for slows down. So they don't have to work as hard in this cold water. They will pop out at the bottom. They'll feed. That tide gets ripping again, and they're back into cover, and they're just kind of shutting it down for a while. So I think there's some biological things that we need to keep in mind. Now, take a look at some things that you can do. Now, I went back a little bit ago and I mentioned this. If let's say let's say it's 2025, everything is working the way that the average flounder likes it, right? They're in the backwaters. They're getting ready to go through those inlets. They're pushing out. Now the cold water comes in. They're going to stop where they are. They are not, if they're 3 miles, 4 miles offshore, they're not going to turn around and go back to the backwaters. They're not. The average fluke will move about a half a mile, maybe a mile to a mile and a half in a day with the tides. So they'll go up, they'll go down, as the tide comes in, they'll start moving in. I think a lot of it is chasing baits. On the way out, they'll shift going out, they'll go with the tide and, just kind of let it take them. It is very rare for them to move more than a mile and a half in a day. So if they're offshore and upwelling comes by, they're not turning around and coming in 5 miles. They're just not going to do it. What is the university down near Atlantic City that does the research?
Rutgers.
So they actually published years ago some information about flounder, and they actually tracked them and they tracked their movements. So they were pinging all over the place and they were tracking how far they moved. This is where it came from. This is not Rich making crap up to sound smart. I'm not smart.
No, we had a couple of those guys speak at our club meeting last year, and they had those radio transmitters. Then they've been following Fluke around for years, and they're still actively doing it.
Yes. Yeah. And that's where they kind of determine that this is where they're going to go. So let's say they're coming out, that temperature drops, and they're in the inlet. They're probably hanging within a half a mile of that inlet on the outside or on the inside. And that's where they're going to be. Now, think about this. We just talked about the yo-yo and that they stop in a certain range and they'll kind of stay there until things kind of get figured out and get back to normal. I have seen more reports of 8+ pound fluke being caught south of LBI in the past week than I have seen in any summer in July in my life. I mean, I see 28 incher, 29 incher, 27 incher, 5.5 pounds, 8.5 pounds. Here's a 9.8 pounder that was pulled out. Didn't quite make it.
We had a few here too, but go ahead.
Yeah. So it's I mean, you see them up there too, but they're in the inlets. They should have been out of if this were last year, they're not in the inlets. They've moved out.
Yeah.
But they
no, you're
stopped.
right. We had, and we're still having guys in the Barnegat Inlet off the jetty here, picking up some really nice 25s and 26s. And then down on the south end of the island where the Little Egg Inlet kind of goes, and they have, it's called the North Run, which goes right along out from where Holgate sticks out,
Yeah.
and there's that just kind of body of water that's behind the sandbar shoal that is formed between the north exit and the Little Egg Inlet. There's like a whole body of water there, that inlet, and there's a lot of guys fishing in there, just picking up some real nice fish. But they're just picking a lot of shorts, and then they're
Right.
getting a couple. There's some big ones out there,
Yeah.
they're there. I also heard, I don't know if this is like, I mean, something that is a reason behind what's going on, or this is just, I mean, this is obviously something that just has been happening forever. That as fluke get larger, they kind of start moving north with their migration. Like instead of going directly east, they're going to kind of go northeast, go up to where the mud hole is, where the Texas Tower is, and north of there, and over the years end up even up by Shrewsbury Rocks, Nantucket Shoals, all that area. I know the research shows that they generally, come back in to where they've been coming in all their lives. But I've heard that the larger the fish get, the more north they kind of drift. And we've all heard that up by Nantucket Shoals and Cape Cod and all that stuff, they're getting 12, 15 pounders on every trip.
Yeah.
So have you heard that is that something that's true, or is that just
So I
someone's
don't
idea?
know. I tried to find some what I would call credible data on that, and I couldn't. I don't know if that's true. However, I'll just say this. The cooler water temperatures are, where they're not getting the extreme hot temperatures, are going to be more conducive to these larger fluke. They just are, which is, probably one of the reasons why southern flounder don't get nearly, I mean, they get close to summer flounder, which is what we have.
Yeah.
And Gulf flounder don't get anywhere close to either of the two.
Yeah,
It's
that's
hotter
another thing
water.
that kind of made me think that that's what's going on, because you get the ones down in Delaware off of Maryland and all that stuff. Their regulation size is 16 inches, and the gill net size is 14 inches. So maybe because the fish are smaller down there, they're allowing people to keep the smaller ones. But then again, the bigger ones, when you're talking about, allowing people to take bigger fish, that's all the females.
Yeah.
Those are all the breeders. You're basically allowing people to take all the females out of the water. I mean, I don't know if that's something that we need to get into and see what we think the right thing to do is. Should there be a slot? I mean,
Well, that slot was a disaster.
that I heard that wasn't. Yeah,
That was an
but
absolute
yeah,
Dave, I made the determination before that. So for those that aren't aware, it was a few years ago. You could keep one fish 18 inches and over in New Jersey, and you could keep two between 17 and 18 inches.
right. Yeah, that was a disaster.
Or between 17 and less than 18.
And less than 18. Yeah, yeah.
So I determined I was only going to go for the big ones. And if I only ended up with one keeper, then that's, so be it. I could not buy the smaller fish because I don't, it's different fishing. You go different places. You
I
hit
remember
different
talking
spots.
to you about this, with you saying that same thing to me. I couldn't get the goddamn 17 and a half.
Yeah. I couldn't do it because
Yeah.
part of it was self-inflicted. I couldn't bring myself to fish for small fish.
No.
I don't look, fluke are not fun to reel in. Right? They're fun to try to get to bite the hook. They don't fight very hard.
Yeah.
They're,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
you don't
You
get
don't have a
epic
bluefish
runs or
on. You don't have a, yeah.
yeah. So I want to hook a big fish, even if I can't keep it. I want to hook a big fish. I want to release it safely and let it go. So for me, I hated it. I absolutely. And then when I was trying to hit, and I was fishing a tournament, I had my over 18, and I'm like, well, now I can't place if I can't fill out, at least one of the other two. I couldn't buy a fish.
Yeah.
It's as soon as it's legal, you can't find it.
And then guys are culling and killing all the fish that they're releasing.
Yeah, you can't really call flounder.
No.
People, they stick them in live wells, and I don't know. I've talked to both firsthand and then through people that are pretty tight with some spear fishermen. And they've said repeatedly, like after opening day fluke, when they're down there, it's just football fields of dead fluke going along the bottom. And they don't float. They don't float up. They just kind of like get washed with the currents right down the channels and right out. I don't know if it's true or not, but and the first hand I spoke to one guy, and he said that, yeah, it's amazing how many dead fluke show up the week that Fluke opens in New Jersey.
That's interesting, because I always wondered where they get that. I'm not saying they get the data from them, but I always wondered how do you know that 10% are dying? But when you're telling me that a guy actually sees it, that's wow.
Yeah, he said it's like a football field of dead fluke, just kind of washing with the currents on the outgoing and on the incoming.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems to me that I don't know. I don't think there's a problem with the fluke population. Like I said, it was a slow start, and there's always more shorts than keepers, and I guess this year it's been more for some. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about where people are fishing, right? So I've seen some nice surf fluke being caught. I've seen some nice out front and some nice in the back and some really nice inlet. So they're catching some quality fish in all the areas. But I do want to say, for those that want to get on them and they want to kind of fish through this and kind of, if you're struggling, turn it around, take a step back, start fishing this like you would a normal June. It may say July on the calendar. It's not necessarily July fishing. Now, if it's a hot day and the water temperatures where you are up in the upper 70s, just fish it like July. But if you're out there and it's 72-degree water or 60-degree water, 68 degrees, look for the temperature breaks. You still need the structure. You still need the predictable flow of bait into a certain area. They are ambush predators. So find all of that, right? Find a nice drop off at the mouth of a creek where warm water on the outgoing is flowing out into the cooler water. They'll stack. Flounder will stack in a spot if there's a significant temperature difference and one temperature is comfortable and the other is not. So if you can find 2 or 3 degrees of difference, that's what I would be doing on those days where the water temperatures just drop. There was a comment in here, actually. Let me see if I can find it here. Oh, my mouse went to sleep. All right, hold on. It was about the South Shore, there it is, of Long Island. So let's put it up there. NYC Fish Chaser. It's having a good July on the South Shore of Long Island before these downpours started. Okay, so there are a couple of things. Let's talk about a couple of things there. The first thing is salinity. So, yes, you can catch fluke damn near in fresh water, right? They will go into the rivers, up the rivers. They don't have to stay below that salt line. They'll move. They'll move in for short periods of time and move out. With that said, when there's heavy rain and downpours and you get a ton of runoff, that does change the salinity of the water. So if you're not sure what to do, you want to, just for the salinity, start pushing towards the inlets and start pushing closer to the salt. The heavier the salt, the better for summer flounder and southern flounder as well. Gulf flounder, if you're watching in Florida, we do actually have Florida viewers and mostly listeners. The Gulf flounder, they don't care. They don't care whether they're not going to worry about the salinity, but when you're southern flounder and summer flounder, they do. The second thing is think about the water temperatures and what those downpours do. They don't just dirty up the water when you have everything running off, from all the creeks up in Pennsylvania down into New Jersey and down into the Delaware Bay and out of New York and out into those bays. But you also have a change in temperature. Sometimes it's hot water that is coming out into those areas, and that can disperse fish as well. Sometimes it's very cold water, and that will change the entire thing. So you have to look at the temperatures, and you have to make your adjustment. You have to look at the salinity, especially immediately after. You're going to want at least 2 or 3 tide cycles after, like, some of these areas. What would you get, like 3-4 inches in an hour in LBI last week?
Yeah, it was pretty heavy, and then there was no fish for about 12 hours.
Yeah, I mean, because that water went into the ocean. That's where it
Yeah.
ended up going. When it finally got out of the streets, it went into the ocean and it came off the mainland and everything. Some places got 5 inches,
Yeah,
5 inches
we had
in
it
one day.
flooded. It flooded pretty bad here, and we always do get some flooding when it rains, but it was pretty hairy. So yeah,
Yeah,
there was a lot of runoff. There was a lot of weed in the water. There was a lot of chocolate water, and yeah, it just turned everything off.
yeah. So people have to, and I'm not judging NYC Fish Chaser at all. I'm just saying, that could be part of it. The salinity change and what were the temperatures of the, not the downpours, of the water that's running off into those areas, and what's that doing? Is it moving the fish further up? Is it moving them to the side of the areas that are running off? If are they moving away from the rivers? Are they moving closer to the rivers? You have to, you kind of have to become the fish whisperer and kind of determine what you think they're going to do based on those factors and make your adjustment.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah, I do move.
if they're sensitive to the salinity or lack thereof, then the shallows are going to be a lot more affected than the deeper waters are. Because there's a more volume of water in the deeps than there are in the shallows. Of course, that's obvious. So go deeper, or like you said, get away from where the runoff is. Go out towards the inlets. Go out
Yep.
front.
I think
Yeah,
that's one of the big things. If you're fishing the Mullica, maybe you move away from the Mullica when you got 5 inches of rain coming out of it. It's as simple as that. And don't move downstream from it, because that's going to push way out into the bay,
yeah,
way out. That fresh water is going to push way out there. So you need a few tide cycles to clean that up, not just to clean up the water and all the crap that comes down with it too, but to get that salinity back into it. So there were so many things, but on these days where the temperature drops, I'll just go back to it. Look, start fishing it like you do spring fluke. Look for the shallower areas, look for the increased temperatures. Mud flats are back in play. Again, they'll move a half a mile. So if you expect to catch, I'm thinking one area specifically, it's about 35 feet deep. This is where in a standard July I would be fishing right now. But if the water temperatures are down, you got about a half a mile that you can push back. They'll move that half mile back into those sounds. They'll sit in those trenches and those ditches. They'll go along those salt marsh banks, the sod banks. They'll start moving back up in there. It's all within their range, and it's going to be more comfortable for them. And as long as you don't have these torrential downpours, it's not necessarily going to mess up the salinity. Now tomorrow it will. Apparently we're back in this
yeah,
weather
yeah. A
tomorrow. Oh
couple
yeah,
of
he said
days.
that.
Yeah, but I've seen, like you said, with water temperature. I think that's a big factor, especially in the bays. I've noticed the last couple of weeks, guys who are catching some really nice fish are in deep water, 20 to 30 feet even. And because we've had such hot weather, we've had such strong sun,
Yep.
and it's long days, and the water temperature really heated up. We had guys measuring water temperatures of 84 degrees in 6, 8 feet of water. Get 12 feet, get 15 feet, get 16, 18 feet. Look for the 20s and 30s, 40 foot. In front of the lighthouse here, the Barnegat Lighthouse on LBI here, we have 40 feet of water coming around that corner. And there's a nice channel that runs in towards where we call it the gas dock. That's just running into the bay, traveling south from the lighthouse. There's that deep channel. That's a 40-foot deep channel, and we had
Yep.
26, 28-inch fluke being pulled out of there last week. But very, very slow drifts. Some guys were spot locking, just dropping down minnows, try to get those tiger minnows, try to get those big fatties.
Yep.
And even some spot. There's a lot of spot being caught. There's a lot of croakers being caught. Anything that's smaller than 12-inch, drop it down there, man. Those big fish go for that big go for that big bait. But yeah, look for the deep waters when it gets this hot out. You don't necessarily have to go out front. Eventually into August is when they start running out to those offshore pieces. And as they're running offshore, as they're coming out of the inlets, they're going to run up the surf too. We do some real good surf fishing here in September. We have our derby, our fall classic that we run every year. It's the 72nd year of it. And we've been racking our brains, pulling our hair out, trying to get more people to sign up for it because have been dropping off since the regulations of striped bass and the beach replenishments have been, kind of hurting the shore fishing, the beach fishing, the
Yep.
surf fishing. And so we opened it up at the end of August so we can have all September to give to the people to fish fluke, which we added to the derby. And we had a lot of turn-ins last year. We had a lot of people weighing in fluke all September, and for years. I mean, I'm fishing the surf. I'm out there at the end of October throwing SPs with teasers, and fluke are hitting them.
Yep.
Into mid-November even. So yeah, on their way out there, if there's something for them to if there's bait fish or whatever. I mean, it doesn't even have to be bait fish. Most fish who are in the surf are eating what's being churned up. And what's being churned up in the surf? Sand fleas and calico crabs.
Yep.
Every species of fish that I've ever harvested off the beach is full of sand fleas, from 2-pound fluke to 40-pound bass. So yeah, that's the time of year. Of course, if you got a boat, you're not going to run along the shoreline, but you're going to go out front, in mid-August and through September and into October, and you're guaranteed to get some good fluking out there. But for the surf fishermen, we love it, man. We're out there every other day, well into the end of September to the end of the season now, catching fluke like crazy because they're moving out and they're just moving up the surf line as well. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm waiting I've seen some pretty good reports. I've seen a couple of reds pulled in already out of the surf.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. A couple of New Jersey reds, nothing big, some offshore, which you would think you'd get first before they start hitting the suds. But
yeah,
I think I've seen 2 or 3 in the past week, New Jersey redfish. So it has to bode kind of well for the fluke, right? I mean, they're typical. Well, I guess you can catch them in really cold water. Actually, yeah. November is a great time for redfish if you want to fish for them up here. But yeah, so I think where we're both coming in is it's not that the fish aren't here. It's just that they're under different patterns, and you have to think about it, right? If you head out and you see a bunch of people that look like casual fishermen and they're all stacked up in one spot, go to a different spot.
I'm the same way, man. I mean, you might want to observe it to see if you see any rods bending.
Yeah.
Even so, we had a tournament last weekend where we were headed out to Garden State South, and my buddy ended up stopping in a few spots. He was not going to fish Garden State South because of how many boats were there.
Yeah.
And he knew there was going to be a lot of boats there. He's like, there's 3 fluke tournaments going on. He goes, there's going to be hundreds of boats out there. So he knew of some good spots, which we hit, and we did pretty well. But there was one group of guys, it's the Leary family, grandfather, father, son, cousins. I mean, these guys, they're the reason why there's a lack of fish in the water, because the Learys are out there. So they were at Garden State South, and they're the ones who caught over 80 fish and had 6 keepers when nobody else was catching, because these guys are smart. They move around and they fish down current on the wrecks.
Yeah.
And they would work one wreck, bang, 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 slow down, move. Next wreck, bang, 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 slow down, move. They just moved around. There was at least 24 boats, if not more, in that area, and they were just popping around, just picking up fish like crazy, because these guys are smart. They're experienced. They're knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Grandpa's
I'd say it's good that they were moving around. I would say to up that ratio, so you have more keepers than you did.
Yeah.
Get in tighter on those structures and really slow it down. You don't have to spot lock, but slow them down and use those natural baits. Here, I'll just throw this. This kind of goes against convention. What you would typically say is, what I said, fish it like you would in June. You would typically fish smaller baits. I don't think you do that right now. I think you go with the larger baits, especially if you're going natural. So a spot would be it's a great bait no matter what, but if you fish it slowly, think about it. The fluke doesn't want to be out, if you have this cold upwelling coming through, it's hiding up against the structure. It's buried in the sand. It's going to come out for the right meal. Make it the right meal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could be sitting downstairs on the couch and my son walks by with a cupcake. I'm like, wish I had a cupcake. He walks by with a rack of ribs. Guess who's getting up off the couch and
You're coming up
following
out
him
of the
into the
sand.
kitchen? Yeah, I'm coming out of the sand. I'm following him into the kitchen. I'm following him out to the smoker, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and I'm getting some ribs, right? So make it enticing. If you're trying to lure them out of an area of comfort, make it worth their while, because again, they are feeding to survive. They're not feeding because it tastes good like a cupcake. They need to collect more calories than they're expending to go get it. Now, they're not in survival mode, right? They're not, but they are going to be more lethargic. There's so much bait around. They're still going to get fed and everything like that. It's not like, it's not like where it's really tough to feed in February. And by the way, there are Fluke in New Jersey in February.
Oh yeah.
Where they're going to be really picky about it. It's not quite like that, but make it enticing. Make that thing smell. Put Procure on your stuff if you're not using Gulp. If you're using Gulp, make sure you use fresh ones. Rotate them through so you get fresh scent on there. Slow it down. Stick it right in their face. Move it slowly so they don't have to expend a lot of energy to get it. And take your time. Really hit those spots hard, because it may take you a few passes over this little 10-foot window where you had the Fluke stacked. And again, they will stack. You just got to find them. And that's where I feel like I can end everything that I've been saying. And I want to go back and just say this. 2024 sucked by all reports. All the public reports and public sentiment kind of leaned that way. But there were people that absolutely crushed it in 2024, and they did things like this. Yeah. They did it. They fished backwards. They fished the early season approach. Some were fishing April approach when they're pre-fishing for the season, and they were doing well. The vast majority of people don't do that. They just go out and they fish typical summer fishing, and they have the same setups, the same rods, the same approach, the same 1.5 mile long drifts down the center of a channel, and they wonder why they're getting shorts. Exactly. Well, it's because that's where shorts live. That's not where the big fish live.
I tell you, if you notice, those shorter fish are more aggressive than the bigger fish.
Oh yeah.
You get a good hit, bang, that's a 12-incher. You get a big fish. What does it do? It grabs it and lays down, and you're, what am I? I'm stuck on the bottom. Oh, it's shaking its head.
Yep.
So yeah, slow it down, man, for those bigger ones.
I learned that way. Yeah. When I'm in an area where I think there are really big fish, I learned. So you've seen some of my video. I slam it like I'm a bass fisherman. I try to cross their eyes. I try to stick that hook right through the bone.
You want to turn that fish inside out, right?
But yeah. But what I used to do is I'd set it, and if I wasn't sure if I got it, I'd drop the tip right away. I will not do that ever again, because the biggest fluke I've ever caught, it's always you stick it and it doesn't move. Yeah. So you almost feel like, you're like kind of low key embarrassed, because you think, shit, I just set on a snag, but then the snag moves. Yep. You're like, oh, okay, it's a big fish. So that happens
so much, man, with those big fish.
I am willing to be embarrassed now. And, I have caught the biggest fish doing that. Like they don't just take off. They don't do anything. They just, you move them an inch when you set it really hard, because of the size rod and the equipment that you're using. It's not going to move it real easily on that initial set, but it is going to set it deep into their mouth. And, that's just one thing that I've changed. I don't care if I set and I was wrong and I hooked the bottom. I'm going to be darn sure it's the bottom before I give up on that and put any slack in that line. Because sometimes, just sometimes, that's actually a fluke, and it's one that you don't want to lose.
Yeah, keep that pressure on.
Keep it on until you're 100% sure. And sometimes it'll turn out to be a big ray or something. Yeah. But for the most part, it's usually going to be a fluke or the bottom. It's going to be one of the two. So just don't be afraid to hook the bottom. If you thought when you said it that it was an actual fluke, see it through to the end. Yeah. Through the embarrassment with your buddies laughing. And look, I fish kayaks. Benji's on here. He would laugh at me. You're like, oh, how is that? He would make fun of me. Joe Billup, all these guys would be making fun of me, but I'll do it. Because if I was right in that split second where I thought it was a bite, I'm keeping that tension on, because if I was right, I'm going to kill myself if I find out that I just let a 7-pound fluke go because
Exactly.
I didn't want Benji to make fun of me.
Yeah.
So
yeah, don't worry about, don't be self-conscious when you're fishing.
No. A lot of people are. A
Yeah.
lot of people are. And I'll be honest, I sit out there and I watch everybody around me, but I'm not judging them. I'm just kind of I'm actually trying to pick up, like, what are they doing that's working? You know, why are they not catching anything? Am I doing the same thing? I'm constantly trying to evaluate it, but yeah, don't ever be embarrassed. If you thought that you had a bite and you set that hook, see it through to the end. Make sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So is there anything that we missed?
Is there anything that we missed? I think we kind of went through all the, the ideas of what people feel is going on. And I honestly think there's nothing going on.
I'm kind of with
worry
you.
About.
Right.
Yeah, I think we hit it all. All my notes are saying we did. Just keep at it, man.
Yeah.
And like Rich said, slow down and look for where they're taking cover.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Just and look, we could be totally wrong, Dave. And if we are, it shouldn't change the approach of people. Just keep going until you figure it out. You will figure it out. These fish are not gone. They're there. And at some point in the day, they're eating. You just have to find where they're most likely to be and just commit to that spot, pound that spot. And if you're sure they were there and they just weren't biting, try it at another time.
You got to move around, man. I always say that even when I'm surf fishing. I mean, don't just stand in one spot for 2 hours. I mean,
right.
How many times can you cast in 20 yards and expect a fish to show up? Keep walking, man.
Yeah.
Try that other spot. Try the shallows. Try the deep. Try the sandbar. Try the whatever. Just you'll find them. And do the same thing out on your boats, man.
Like, and post the pictures or text them to me. Text them to me so I can see them. We're still waiting for the baby to show up, so I'm really limited on when I can go fishing. So yeah, I love seeing the pictures. So and people did. They sent me. I can't share them, but I got some really nice fluke pics from this week, this past 7 days, in between storms, by the way, even after storms. Now, not immediately after, but within a day after the storms, some really nice fish. So yeah, everyone, listen, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Just make sure you're out there. Try different things and just keep in mind that you may just have to change up your pattern and your approach, but it's nothing that you haven't done before. Just look at the water temperatures, look at the conditions, make the adjustments, and send me texts of those fish, because I'm not going to be on the water for the next week. Well, I might. I might be out on Sunday with my brother and with Benji, actually, crabbing and fishing. But it all depends on when the baby comes. So, yeah. All right, Dave, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to have you back so we can talk about the fall and LBI fishing in the fall. But thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll be back next Monday. Until then, everyone, get out there, get on the water, and get some tight lines.